The scent of dust motes dancing in sunbeams. That's what always brings me back. It's a specific kind of dust, the kind that settles on forgotten things in quiet rooms, the kind that whispers of lives lived, of breaths taken and held. For me, it's the scent of the Soto, of boxes untouched for decades, of secrets that never found their voice. My name is Arthur. I'm 62 now, a retired architect living in Umakasa, far too big for one man. But it wasn't always this quiet. There was a time, a lifetime ago, when Esta Casa echoed with voices, with laughter, and with a silence far more profound than any noise, a silence that, even now, decades later, still screams. My parents, Eleanor and Thomas, died without ever knowing the truth of my heart. They never knew. And the weight of that unsaid truth, it's a burden I carry every single day. Do you ever wonder what goes unsaid? What confessions linger, trapped behind teeth, waiting for a moment that never arrives? I do. Every single day. It started, as most things do, with a misunderstanding, or perhaps a series of them, woven into the fabric of our family like threads in a tapestry. My father, Thomas, was a man of logic, of straight lines and clear answers. He was an engineer, a builder of pontes and structures, a man who saw the world in blueprints and schematics. My mother, Eleanor, was the quiet counterpoint, a woman who pintava aquarellas of landscapes she'd never seen, who found beauty in the crooked branches of an old oak tree, in the way light fractured through a prism. I was their only child, born into this delicate balance of order and chaos, and I found myself drawn to both, yet belonging to neither. From an early age, I felt different. While other boys chased balls and built forts, I would spend hours in the Soto, not playing, but observing. I'd watch the dust motes, mesmerized by their slow, deliberate dance. I'd trace the patterns of frost on the window pane with my finger, imagining intricate worlds within each crystalline structure. My father saw this as a lack of vigor, a weakness. "Arthur, boy, get outside. Don't you want to be strong?" He'd boom, his voice echoing in the small house. His words, though meant as encouragement, felt like a judgment that I was failing to be the son he envisioned. My mother, she understood a different part of me. She'd bring me her watercolors, the vibrant blues and greens, and explain how the light fell, how the colors blended. She saw the artist in me, the dreamer, but even her understanding was tinged with a subtle sadness, a quiet resignation. She never openly defied my father, never challenged his pronouncements. Her love was a gentle rain, always present, but never powerful enough to wash away the deeper currents that ran through our home. The first major rift, the one that truly set the course for everything that followed, occurred when I was 15. I had discovered a passion per la fotografia, not just snapping pictures, but developing them in a makeshift darkroom in our porão. The magic of an image slowly appearing on paper, the smell of the chemicals, the quiet solitude. It was my sanctuary. I had saved my meager mesada for months to buy a used amplificador. I showed my father minha primeira impressão boa, a stark black and white image of celeiro velho, its weathered wood telling 1,000 stories. He looked at it, his brow furrowed, and then handed it back. "Arthur," he said, his voice devoid of emotion, "what good is this? It's not a bridge. It doesn't build anything. It's just a picture." That was it. Just a picture. In his world, if it didn't serve a practical purpose, if it didn't contribute to the tangible world, it was worthless. His words, so casually delivered, felt like a physical blow. It wasn't anger I felt, but a profound, aching disappointment. A sense that the very core of who I was, what I loved, was invisible to him. My mother, standing nearby, offered a small, hesitant smile. "It's beautiful, Arthur," she whispered, but her eyes darted to my father, a silent apology in their depths. Even then, I understood. She loved me, but she couldn't, stand up to him. Not for something as impractical as art. I retreated. Not physically, but emotionally. I learned to keep my passions hidden, to present a facade of practicality. I excelled in math and science in school, not because I loved them, but because they earned my father's rare nods of approval. I built model airplanes, not for the joy of creation, but because they were engineering in miniature. I became adept at compartmentalizing my life, tucking away the parts of me that yearned for color and light, for the abstract and the beautiful, into a locked room within my soul. The silence grew. Not a hostile silence, but a polite, distant one. Conversations at the dinner table revolved around grades, chores, and the weather, never about dreams, fears, or the quiet longings of a developing heart. I watched my parents, two separate islands in a sea of unspoken emotions. My mother, retreating further into her watercolors, her world becoming smaller, more contained. My father, consumed by his work, his days a relentless pursuit of order and control. I longed to bridge the gap, to tell them what I truly felt, to share the vibrant inner world I inhabited. But how do you start when the silence has become a language in itself? How do you speak when you've been taught, implicitly, that certain words are simply not welcome? College was my escape. I chose architecture, a compromise. It had the structure my father admired, the engineering principles he respected, but it also had design, aesthetics, the artistic flair that called to me. I thought perhaps, through architecture, I could finally connect with both of them. I could show my father that art could be practical, and my mother that practicality could be art. I excelled, pouring all my suppressed creativity into my designs. I found a voice in steel and glass, in the interplay of light and shadow on a facade. During my breaks, returning home, the distance only seemed to widen. My father would ask about my grades, about the technical aspects of my studies. He'd nod, satisfied, when I spoke of stress loads and material science. But when I tried to describe the beauty of a cantilevered roof, the way a building could breathe with its environment, his eyes would glaze over. He'd change the subject, typically to the latest stock market report. My mother would listen, her gaze soft, but she never asked probing questions. It was as if she sensed the pain beneath my words, the yearning for understanding, but was powerless to offer more than quiet empathy. I remember one particular Christmas. I was 22, home for the holidays. I had spent weeks designing a new kind of passive solar home, a concept that was still quite radical then. It was a beautiful design, blending functionality with environmental consciousness. I had painstakingly created a detailed model, intricate and delicate, hoping it would finally be the bridge. I presented it to them after dinner, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. My father examined it, turning it over in his hands. "Interesting," he finally said, his voice flat. "But is it practical? The cost of these specialized materials, and the market for such a niche concept?" He dismissed it, not with anger, but with a quiet, logical dismantling that was far more devastating. My mother, however, reached out and gently touched the model. "Arthur," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "It's truly lovely. It has such grace." But then, she too looked at my father, and the words died on her lips. I saw it then, truly saw it. Not just his inability to connect, but her inability to stand firm. It wasn't a lack of love from her, but a profound fear, a lifetime of being overshadowed, that kept her from fully expressing herself, even for her own son. That night, I cried in my room, not for the model, but for the hope that had been shattered, for the chasm that seemed to grow wider with each passing year. Years passed. I built my career, becoming a successful architect. I designed elegant, functional buildings that won awards and garnered praise. I married, had children of my own. My parents visited, always polite, always distant. They were proud of my accomplishments, in their own way, but it felt like pride in a stranger's achievements, not in the heart of their son. My father would point out my buildings to his friends, detailing the structural integrity, the cost-effectiveness, never the beauty, the vision, the soul I poured into each design. My mother would touch the walls of my home, remarking on the light, on the feeling of warmth, but she never asked about the process, about the passion that drove me. As they aged, the silence deepened, becoming almost sacred. I tried, in my own clumsy way, to break it. I bought my mother a new set of watercolors, the finest pigments I could find. She thanked me profusely, but they remained untouched, gathering dust on her easel. I tried to talk to my father about his childhood, about his dreams, but he would simply shrug. "No time for such things, Arthur. Life is about moving forward." It was as if they had both erected impenetrable walls around their inner lives, walls I, their son, could not breach. Then came the calls. First, about my mother's declining health, a quiet, insidious illness that slowly stole her memory, her ability to paint, her very essence. I visited often, sitting by her bedside, holding her hand. Her eyes, though often vacant, would sometimes flicker with a recognition that tore at my heart. I'd tell her stories, about my children, about my latest projects, even about my old darkroom. Sometimes she'd smile, a ghost of her former self. "Beautiful, Arthur," she'd whisper, and for a fleeting moment I'd feel a connection, a glimpse of the mother who once saw the artist in me. But the words I truly needed to say, the deep, profound love I felt for her, the regret that I hadn't shared more of my true self with her, they remained trapped. The timing always felt wrong, the moment too fragile, the fear of upsetting her too great. My father, during this time, became a shadow. He cared for her with a quiet, stoic devotion, but the light had gone out of him. He was a man without his anchor. After she passed, he withered rapidly. The engineer who built bridges could not rebuild his own shattered world. He rarely spoke, his gaze distant, fixed on something I couldn't see. I tried to comfort him, to tell him how much she loved him, how much I loved them both, but the words felt hollow, inadequate, swallowed by the immense grief that hung in the air. He died 6 months later, quietly, in his sleep. They were gone, and with them, the last chance to speak the words that had been building inside me for a lifetime. The funeral was a blur, the condolences, the platitudes. Everyone spoke of their kindness, their quiet dignity. No one spoke of the unspoken, of the vast emotional landscape that lay beneath the surface of their lives, and mine. Months later, I found myself back in their house, sorting through their belongings. It was a pilgrimage, a painful excavation of a past I could never truly grasp. In the Sotao, amidst the familiar scent of dust and time, I found a small wooden box, tucked away in the back of my mother's old hope chest. It was locked. Curiosity, a feeling I hadn't allowed myself to indulge in for years, gnawed at me. I found the key, tiny and ornate, hidden beneath a stack of old lace doilies. Inside the box, there were letters, dozens of them, tied with faded ribbons. They were addressed to my mother, from a woman named Clara. As I read, a new world unfolded. Clara was my mother's closest friend from childhood, a woman I had only vaguely heard mentioned. The letters were filled with a vibrant intimacy, a shared passion for art, for beauty, for a world my mother had kept hidden from us. But then, I found a different set of letters. These were from my mother, to Clara, never sent. They spoke of her dreams, her frustrations, her quiet despair at my father's inability to see her, to understand her artistic soul. One letter, dated just a few months before I presented my solar house model, stopped me cold. "Clara," she wrote, "Thomas simply doesn't understand. He sees only practicality, never the heart of things. I worry for Arthur. He has so much of me in him, this yearning for beauty, for expression. I see the light in his eyes when he speaks of his designs, and it breaks my heart that Thomas dismisses it so easily. I want to tell Arthur how proud I am, how much I see his talent, but I am so afraid. Afraid of Thomas's disapproval, afraid of stirring the waters. I have lived my life in his shadow, and now I fear I am allowing Arthur to do the same." Another letter, from much earlier, when I was 15, read, "Arthur showed Thomas his photographia today, a beautiful image of the old Solero. Thomas merely called it a picture. My heart ached for Arthur. I tried to tell him it was beautiful, but my voice felt so small. I wish I were stronger, Clara. I wish I could protect him from the weight of his father's expectations." The words hit me like a physical wave. My mother, she saw me. She understood. All those years, I thought she was just a quiet bystander, a gentle echo, but she was a silent warrior, fighting her own battles, carrying her own burdens, and struggling to protect me in the only way she knew how. The tears came then, hot and stinging, for the mother I had misunderstood, for the connection we almost had, for the words that were never spoken. But there was more. Tucked beneath the letters, I found a small, leather-bound journal. It was my father's. His handwriting, usually so precise, was sprawling, hesitant. I opened it, my hands trembling. It was not a logbook of engineering projects, but a collection of observations, of quiet reflections. He wrote about the intricate patterns of snowflakes, about the way light played on the surface of a lake, about the silent strength of an old tree. He wrote about my mother, about her quiet grace, her unspoken depth. He wrote about me. One entry, dated a few weeks before his death, was particularly difficult to read. "Eleanor is gone," he had written, "and I am lost. I spent my life building things, tangible things, but I never built the bridge to her heart, or to Arthur's. I see now, in the quiet of this empty house, the beauty Eleanor found in the world, the beauty I dismissed as impractical. I see the passion in Arthur's designs, the way he blends structure with soul. I always thought I was protecting him, guiding him towards a useful life, but I see now that I stifled him. I loved him deeply, but I never told him how I loved him, or why. I never told him I saw the artist in him, the dreamer. I was afraid, I think. Afraid of my own emotions, afraid of a world I couldn't quantify. I wanted him to be strong, to be safe, but I never let him be truly seen. And now, it's too late. They are both gone, and all the words I should have spoken, all the love I should have shown, are trapped here, in this silence. The journal dropped from my hands. My father, the man of logic, the engineer, the seemingly unfeeling rock. He saw it all. He understood. He regretted. The revelation was both devastating and liberating. They weren't distant because they didn't care. They were distant because they too were trapped. Trapped by their own fears, by the unspoken expectations of a lifetime, by the very silence they had helped to create. I sat there, amidst the dust motes and the ghosts of my parents, tears streaming down my face, not tears of anger, but of profound sorrow and a strange, bittersweet understanding. They had loved me. In their own complicated, imperfect ways, they had loved me deeply. And I, in my own youthful pain and misunderstanding, had never truly seen them either. The weight of the unsaid words, it hasn't vanished. It never will. But now it's different. It's no longer a burden of guilt, but a reminder of the fragility of human connection, of the preciousness of every moment, of the vital importance of speaking our truths while there is still time. I think of my own children now, of the conversations I have with them, the space I try to create for their dreams, their passions, even the ones I don't fully understand. I tell them I love them, not just with words, but with an openness I never experienced. I tell them I see them, truly see them, in all their glorious, messy complexity. The dust motes still dance in the sunbeams of my own home, but now they carry a different meaning. They are a reminder of the past, yes, but also a call to the present, a call to break the silence, to speak the unspeakable, to bridge the gaps between hearts, before it's too late. My parents died. They never knew I felt this, but I know they felt it too. And that, in its own quiet way, is a kind of redemption. If you've ever felt the weight of unspoken words, if you've ever wished you could go back and say what needed to be said, then you understand. Life moves fast, but some lessons are learned slowly, painfully, over decades. Don't let your story be one of silence. Speak your truth, share your heart. It's never too late to start. If this story resonated with you, if it made you reflect on your own journey, please consider subscribing to Pure Emotion, Life After 50. Hit that like button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss another story that reminds us all that every life holds a story worth telling, and every word, a chance for connection. What if you had done things differently? Is there still time?